All right, so this video will focus on 7.1. The very first thing we're going to talk about is just squared, cubed, and at the very end we're going to figure out where we're going in terms of the Pythagorean theorem. So we started off with this right here where we find the product, and basically I have like 12 times 12, 9 times 9. I could think of these things a different way. I could think of it as 12 squared. And if I do 12 squared, or 12 times 12, I get 144. And if I do all of these, if you pause the video and solve them and then check it after, go through, here are all the various values. Now a couple that I want to make sure that I showed you the 12 times 12, but let's look at that 2/3. Now 2/3 to the second power is really 2/3 in parentheses to the second power, because that will take the whole thing. And this becomes 2 times 2, which is 4, and 3 times 3, which is 9. And that's how I get these answers. And the reason why we're showing you this is because the inverse, meaning the opposite of squared, is something called square root, which is what we're going to figure out today. And what I mean by inverse is if I have something that's like multiplication, the inverse, or the complete opposite, is dividing by. The inverse of addition is subtraction, and so on. And the inverse of squared is square root. So if we look at these things right here, and I have like an area of a square, and I know that it is 121. And basically, we know a square is the both sides have to be equal to each other. So to think about what times what, because the area of a square would in this case be s squared equals 121. I have to think about what times itself will equal 121. Well, the way that we do that is this thing called square root. So I'm going to go through and square root that side, and I'll square root this side. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to both. This square root sign and this squared actually cancel each other out because they're inverses. So I'm just left with an s. And now I think of what times what equals 121? Well, it's 11. So if I do that, the square root of 121 is 11. And that's what I have right here. So s is 11. If I do this one here, what times what is 81? And it is 9. This here is what times what is 324. I believe it's, let's just double check it real fast. I think it's 18. Let's just look. So 18 times 18 is 324. 361. So if I think about, maybe it's got to be bigger than this. So maybe I'll do 19 times 19 and see what I get. And I get 361. So this, in this case, would be 19 times 19. So then we'll look at these here and think about what times what is 225. And the square root of 225 is 15. And I think about 289. Now here's the thing I want you to think about. This 2.89 is a little tricky to think about right now, right? But what if I move this decimal place over 2 spots? If I did that, that would be 289. And if I thought about what the square root was of 289, and the way in your calculator, so if I have 289 and I hit the square root button, it'll give me is 17. I know the answer can't be 17 because it's got to be 2.89. So I look at the number 17 and I think, how can I get back to this? So when I multiply it by itself, it equals 2.89. Well, this is going back 2 spots. And if I'm multiplying 17 times 17, 2 spots is 1.7 times 1.7, right? So this would be 1.7 squared equals 200 or 2.89. So that's why this answer is 1.7. For this one here, if I think about the square root of 4 over the square root of 9, I'm going to get I'll get 2 over 3, which is what this is. If I take 2/3 times 2/3, I get 4/9. This one here, we're doing the same kind of thing, but now we're going to work for the radius of each circle, and we're going to figure out what this is equal. Now we have to know the formula first of all for the area of a circle, and the area is radius squared times pi equals 36 pi. Now the first thing you'd want to do when you solve this is you want to go through and you want to get rid of this pi. So divide by pi, and these will cancel out and these will cancel out, right? So I have r squared equals 36. And now I have to think about the inverse of r squared, which would be the square root of r squared, and I do it to both sides. And when I do that, I'm now going to have r, oops, a little big there, right? So I have r equals, and the square root of 36 is just 6. So that's this answer here. This is 1, so it'd be like this. I'd have 1, and the square root of 1 is 1, of course. This is 0.25, so this answer is 0.5. And this is 9/16, so that will be 3 over 4. All right, now we're going to look for the square root of 49. Now notice it says the 2 square roots. The reason why there's 2 square roots is because I have this. It's basically saying, so I have 49, and I'll have the plus and minus version of it. With the examples I provided before, the negative version doesn't really make sense, but really every square root that is written like this has 2 values. It could either be 7 or it could be -7, right? Because -7 times -7 is positive 49, right? So these are the 2 values, 7 and -7. This here, so this would be the square root is 5. This is going to be -3 over 4. And this one here would be, if I move it over 2 spots, 225. I believe that's 15, so 1.5. And it's plus and minus for these two because there's a plus and minus sign here. This is just a -1 because there's a negative sign there. And this is just a positive because there's no negative sign here. Find the 2 square roots. So this would be the plus minus square root of 36, which is -6 and +6, -10 and +10, -11, +11. Find the negative square root, so this would be -1. This is going to be plus 2 over 5 or minus 2 over 5. And then this right here, if I move it over 2 spots, geez, I don't know, 1225, let's look. So I go 12.25, so 3.5. So there are all the answers. This one here is talking about evaluating what we're doing. So basically think of order of operations like PEMDAS, and think about this. Think about everything inside of the square root comes first. It's almost like being in parentheses. So when I first do this, I have this left-hand side of the equation, and I'd have this, the square root of 36 is 6, and then I have 5 times 6, and that's why this is written this way, 5 times 6, and I get 30 plus 7, so it's 37, right? This one here, I have to do the square root first of all, and 18 divided by 2 is just 9. That's where this comes from. And the square root of 9 is 3. So I basically have 3 plus 1/4, which is 3 1/4. And then finally this one here, the square root and this squared cancel out. So I have 81 minus 5, and that's why I have 81 minus 5 here. And if I subtract those, I'm going to get 76. This one here says the area of a crop circle is 4,218 feet. So we know that the area again is radius squared times pi. In this case, we'll say is equal to 4,5,216. And it says, what is the radius? And use 3.14 for pi. So that means that if I divide by pi here, and divide this by pi, that means I have r squared equals 45,216. And they said use 3.14 for pi. So I'm just going to say 3.14. And now I'm going to do that real fast. I'll have 45,216 divided by 3.14. I get this 14,400. So I'm going to say r squared equals 14,400. And when I do the square root of this on both sides, I will have r equals 120. So my radius is 120. And these are all the steps that I do to get this. And then, of course, we discussed in class the homework that we had. But that's really the